Hey guys, it's Derek. Hope you're all doing well today. So in this video, I'm going to be recapping my presentation that I put together at Anarchadelphia. So this was a conference that took place in mid-September in Philadelphia, and it was largely about cryptocurrency. However, there were many occult topics discussed as well. And a little bit before the conference, I reached out to them since I felt like I had something to offer. And originally, they had me set up to do a workshop there, which I did end up doing, but what was even more special is that I was allowed to speak on the main stage during the conference to all the attendees there at the time. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the PowerPoint presentation that I put together for that conference. And when I went on stage there, I told everybody a little bit of background about me. I'm someone who discovered numerology around 2015, 2016. Always interested in conspiracy theories, but I did consider myself a skeptic to pretty much all of them. However, nothing really captivated me as much as Gematria when I first came across it, like I said, around early 2016. As I began paying more attention to it, I realized that there needed to be a better calculator online, so I developed my calculator at gematrinator.com. And as I began studying this language of letters and numbers, I began to discover a lot more that I thought was fascinating, so much so that it caused me to change my YouTube channel into a Gematria channel. I'm now on my second YouTube channel as YouTube deleted my first one. But in this presentation, what I want to do is share essentially some of the most important things, some of the most basic things that I think show, or in my belief, prove that this language is somehow coded with the language of geometry, the mathematics of the circle. These things can all be discovered by pulling apart the layers of our language and essentially decoding them into numbers. So in this video, we'll look at the mathematics of the circle, how that is coded into the language. We're going to look at the numerology of the moon, the largest observable circle in the sky, how that ties into this larger riddle. And then we're going to take a look at the Eclipse Crucifixion code, which is based on the story of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion that begins the New Testament. We're going to take these codes and apply them to mainstream media stories. Now, it's my belief that the occult, as we call it, or people who are high up in secret societies, are really what's running our mainstream media and our government. And they are using this language of letters and numbers to tease us, mock us, give us some fake news stories. We're also going to look at the Eclipse Crucifixion code and how it ties into real-life celebrity deaths. And then at the end of this video, we're going to look at the organic matrix, which is how I have discovered numerology to be relevant in my own life. This is something that many of my subscribers have applied to their own lives and found similar patterns with. Some of my friends and family gave me permission to use their names and some of their numerology, just to show you guys that we're living in a truly magical world. And it's my belief that Gematria is not only something that is being used by the elite to mock us in the lower classes and feed us fake news stories, but that it is actually the language of creation itself, and something God uses that we ourselves as humans can see and help wake up a little bit more to the creation that we live inside of. So with that, let's get into the presentation. And again, I guess before I go on, I'm going to be sharing, again, some personal things. Around the time I got into numerology, I was breaking up with my longtime girlfriend. We were together for over 7 years. So I'm going to be looking at a little bit of the numerology of that relationship too. And had I told you that I'd be sharing this kind of stuff 5 years ago, I would definitely think that you'd be crazy. But, this Gematria numerology kind of found me, I feel like. And if I didn't share this side of the thing, of what I'm discovering, then I feel like I would be doing a disservice. So, we're going to break it all down. And when I first labeled this presentation and wanted to give it a title for the conference in Philadelphia, I called it Awakening to the Geometric Universe as Expressed Through Language. And In the language of letters and numbers, that phrase sums to 878 in the reverse alphabetic order. My full name, as it's printed on my birth certificate, also has gematria of 878. And we're going to break these ciphers down in a couple of slides. What I want to point out is that what's most important is to understand that a lot of these words and phrases have matching numbers. The numbers themselves are not always all that significant. However, when there is a point where I want you to try to remember a certain number and its particular significance, I will point it out. Now, at Anarchadelphia, a lot of the speakers had a similar theme, that we can help change the reality, not just with our actions, but also with our thoughts and beliefs. And I believe that science has run experiments in the past to demonstrate this. One great experiment to point to is the double slit experiment, which basically shows that particles at an atomic level behave differently, whether they're being observed or not. And if you don't think this experiment is convincing, I also urge you to look into the quantum eraser experiment, in which not only do atoms appear to change into particles from waves when they're being observed, but that this can also happen retroactively, so that the particles change based on whether or not they're being observed in the future, well after they've gone through their slit. Another experiment that was conducted in the 90s and early 2000s is something called the phantom DNA effect. There is some debate within the scientific community about the legitimacy of this study, but you'll see that with many studies. And ultimately, there are too many studies of this nature that point to the fact that reality is not the simple construct of atoms that we were led to believe it was. The first step of this experiment took DNA from a human being and placed them in a vacuum. It found that when this occurred, other photons in the vacuum would arrange in a certain order. And they would find that this wouldn't occur with other materials other than DNA. This experiment was expanded so that the DNA was removed from the person and placed in a separate room, several hundred feet away. At this stage of the experiment, the subject was shown videos designed to elicit emotion, whether it was comedy, war footage, erotic images. And the DNA was found to emit electrical responses at the same moment the person experienced emotion, even though this was occurring at the same building but a different room. This experiment was duplicated at distances of up to 350 miles with similar results. In the third experiment, the subject was asked to meditate to try and essentially generate the emotion that the videos in the previous step were designed to elicit. And even still, the DNA was able to change shape based on the type of emotion that the subject focused on. And essentially what experiments like this tell us is that there's a previously unrecognized type of energy that underlies this reality and connects all living tissues, living beings. Apparently, it's human emotion that has a direct influence on this living DNA, and the distance between DNA is of no consequence. Therefore, they're not limited by the speed of light. So the only logical conclusion, if you're to take these experiments at face value, is that there is an energy field indicative of a matrix of energy that connects any one thing with everything else in the universe. Assuming the Big Bang was true, which I have my doubts, but if everything started joined together in one small space, then we're still together just in what we perceive to be more space. And there's been a lot of films, books, other literature that have kind of been exploring this idea over time. Many people are familiar with the law of attraction, that belief and emotion helps attract people with similar beliefs and emotions. The secret, that if you put your desires and essentially brainwash yourself into believing them, that they will come true. TV shows like Touch describe the numeric side of this. And then there's the movie The Matrix, which is often referred to by many of us, and many researchers say that this is a divine matrix of sorts. I find it interesting that the word matrix essentially has the same root word as gematria. Words like matrimony, maternal, all of these having the same base, going back to creation. And I just want to point out there's a couple of books. There's a couple Greg Braden books, actually. This one called Human by Design, which talks about this organic matrix. I haven't gotten deeply into that one. The other book he has is called The Divine Matrix, and explains more about those scientific experiments. Another book I picked up recently, I heard Dan Barrett talking about this on his channel, called Truth, My Synchromystic Journey, and it's about an author named Nikki Norlock, and she explains how when she took a step back and relaxed and kind of gave her life to the divine, not necessarily God, but just accepted that she was part of something greater to help find her purpose, that something took over and her life started taking on meaning from that point on, and all of these synchronicities began occurring. And this is essentially what I'm doing. Now, I haven't written a book yet. Maybe that's something that'll happen down the road. But this essentially is my journey, except it also includes numbers, but it's very similar to the synchromystic journey that Nikki Norlock laid out. So on the screen, we're looking at our two most basic Gematria ciphers, called English Ordinal, which numbers the alphabet 1 through 26, each letter numbered relative to its position. We also have the full reduction method, or Pythagorean Gematria. This method, similar to English Ordinal, but when you get to double-digit numbers, these digits are added together and reduced down to a single digit. So J, the 10th letter, 1 plus 0 equals 1, so J becomes 1. K, the 11th letter, 1 plus 1 is 2, K becomes 2. The letter S is the only one that needs to be reduced twice, since 1 plus 9 equals 10. 1 plus 0 then equals 1, so S becomes 1. There are also complementary ciphers called reverse ordinal and reverse reduction. These are essentially the exact same. However, they use the alphabetic order and reverse. And you will find that the vast majority of this presentation uses the simple alphabetic order, but these reverse ciphers are relevant too. And technically, these are the only ones you really need to be able to decode the media and its news stories. Let's take, for example, a story that came out a little bit before I prepared this presentation in August. In this story, a man paraded around New York City and dropped off some empty rice cookers, which caused a bomb scare. This happened on the date August 16th, which is written 16/8 in most parts of the world. In the alphabetic order, New York City equals 168. In reverse, rice cooker sums to 168. It was later revealed that the suspect was from West Virginia, which equals 168. And this story reminded us of the Boston Marathon bombing, where pressure cooker bombers were used. And, think about it. I certainly wouldn't suggest that anybody do this, but if you or I were to go around the city and place empty rice cookers on the street, do you really think it's going to make national headlines, top story on CNN? Of course not. But this is news by the numbers. This story was published 330 weeks after the Boston Marathon bombing, and in Gematria, Boston Marathon bombing equals 330. This represents the number 33 since zeros are ignored, and Massachusetts and New York are two of the very few states, just a handful, that sum to 33 in reduction Gematria. A couple of other ciphers that we'll be tapping into are called English Extended and Jewish or Latin Gematria. These ciphers are structured similarly to ancient Hebrew and Greek isopsephy charts. They're similar to the reduction, however, instead of going down to a single digit, they add a 0 for each layer. So 1 through 9, 10 through 90, and 100 through 900. The Latin cipher is built off of the Latin alphabetic order with more modern English characters, J, V, and W, placed at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about Freemasonry, as they are one of the most ubiquitous societies, if not the largest in the world, and it's This is an establishment that uses this language of letters and numbers to great effect. The Freemasons have something called the 47th problem of Euclid, which establishes the law of foundation. In standard reduction, the word foundation sums to 47. Now, 47 is a significant number in regards to the mathematics of the Earth. There are 47 degrees between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, which is as far north and south as the sun will go during the year. This means there's 23.5 degrees between each tropic and the equator, 47 degrees overall. The equator is the middle of the Earth. The word middle equals 47 in ordinal. The word time also 47. The four directions we have are north, east, west, and south. Using those abbreviations, NEWS equals 47. The North Star, which before we had GPS, people had to use to navigate, or compasses for that matter, we use the Pole Star, which sums to 47 in reduction. This is also a number that the government likes. 47 seems to be equated with authority. The words obey and judge both equal 47 in ordinal. Authority, government, president, White House, Democrat, Republican, no matter which party you vote, you're still voting for a 47. Now, in English extended gematria, the word foundation equals 740, which again represents the number 74. Now, these numbers are connected very closely, 4 and 7. 7 is the fourth prime number. In gematria, both fourth and prime sum to 74 in reverse. The United States of America was built by Freemasons, George Washington being one of the most famous ones. The word Masonic equals 74 in ordinal. Our national holiday, Independence Day, is 7/4, and in reduction, Independence Day sums to 74. So does the word holiday in ordinal. And what we're studying here is called Simple English Gematria. All three of these words have an ordinal value of 74. As we'll see, this is a form of mysticism, or divination as some people may call it, and similar to the tarot. People use decks of tarot cards the same way, and that sums to 74 as well. When we're looking at the Freemasons' compass, we find that the compass is actually set to 47 degrees. In reduction, the circle equals 47, and of course, the compass draws the circle. 47 is a prime number, and as I just mentioned, we'll be talking about these a lot. 47 is the 15th prime number, and the circle is the 15th letter in the English alphabet. Furthermore, the word gematria has the same gematria as the circle in 3 of our primary gematria ciphers. The word geometry sums to 108, both ordinal and reverse. So it's safe to say that gematria is geometry within the language, and we see this quality with other interesting words like love, which sums to 54 both forwards and backwards. Earlier we looked at Euclid's 47th problem. Euclid is considered the father of geometry, and Euclid equals 108 and reverse. So let's talk more about the mathematics of the circle. The circle is one of just a couple of primary shapes that has 360 degrees. When you write out 360 in ordinal, it sums to 227. Now, this is actually a significant number related to the circle. If you divide 22 by 7, you get the first 3 digits of pi, 3.14. And on a Windows keyboard, Alt-227 gives you the pi symbol. And this number is all over the place if you have eyes for it. In the movie The Life of Pi, which was, intriguingly enough, published on September 11th, 2001, an event we'll be touching on here and there throughout the presentation, the boy survives 227 days after a shipwreck. So not only does 22 divided by 7 equal 3.14 on a calculator, but in the alphabetic order, when you spell out 22 divided by 7, it sums to 314. And there are more connections with the circle between English ordinal and this Jewish or Latin Gematria cipher. Consider that in Jewish Gematria, the word pi sums to 69. In ordinal, the word circles equals 69. The singular word circle sums to 50, and the circle is worth 50 in Jewish Gematria. We mentioned this equation 22 divided by 7, which gives you 3.14. Well, it's actually between 3.14 and 3.15, and in Jewish Gematria, this phrase sums to 3.15. So we have the moon, the big circle in the sky. Now, Gematria, again, comes from the Kabbalah, which is rooted in ancient Jewish mysticism. And I always found it interesting that they use the circles, or the 10 Sephiroth, in the Tree of Life, which is about obtaining spiritual peace and understanding. The word Gematria sums to 38 in reduction. Again, it comes from the Kabbalah, which equals 38 ordinal. And in Hebrew, the language of ancient Jews, the word moon equals 38, so does the word Kabbalah. So interesting that the word Kabbalah, 38 English and Hebrew, and granted there are several ways to spell it, but this is certainly one of the more widely accepted ones. The Hebrew calendar, in fact, uses a real month, whereas in the Gregorian calendar we just divide the year up into 12 months, but there are only 12 months, 12 of every 19 years. 7 of them have a 13th lunar phase, and the Hebrew calendar has 13 months every couple of years for that fact. From new moon to new moon is 29.5 days, and using the alphabetic order, 29.5 days sums to 314, again going back to the digits of pi. There's something called the sorrow cycle in astronomy. This is a cycle of 223 lunar phases. And every 223 lunar phases, we get an eclipse of the same sorrow cycle. So if you go back from the date of any recent eclipse, exactly 223 lunar phases, you'll find there was also an eclipse on that date. In Hebrew, the word the moon sums to 223 when referring to the object rotating around the Earth. Using the alphabetic order, 223 is the first number to have an ordinal value of 314. If you use the equatorial radius of the moon to get its diameter, you find it's just about exactly 2,160 miles at its center. In ordinal, 2,160 miles sums to 423, which is the extended value of the moon. This number, 216, is actually very special. This is the product of 6 times 6 times 6. Of course, 666 believed to be the number of the beast by many. In the alphabetic order, mathematics of the circle equals 216. In Jewish Gematria, this same phrase sums to 666. If you take the Roman numerals for 2160 and add it to the Gematria of the moon, you get 666 there as well. There's something called the magic square of the moon, and that is a 9 by 9 square. In the reverse alphabetic order, the moon equals 99. In ordinal, the moon equals 90, and if you flip those numbers upside down, you get yet another 666. And this number is significant for more reasons than just being the number of the beast. It relates to the carbon atom, 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons, which makes up most of a human being and their DNA. It's also a number that represents the tilt of the Earth. The Earth's axis at a 66.6 degree tilt from the plane to the sun. In Jewish Gematria, 666 equals 2038. And this stands out because the average distance from the moon to the Earth is approximately 238,000 miles. But sometimes we write numbers with the word and. 666 equals 2083. The moon equals 283. But perhaps even more interesting is that 2083 is the 314th prime number. There's also a very mystical relationship between the moon and Saturn. Whereas the moon has a 29.5-day orbital period, Saturn orbits the sun once every 29.5 years. These numbers are very close. They're not exact. They're off by 1/400th. Well, 1/400th just happens to be the ratio of the size of the moon to the sun. The moon also 1/400th the distance to the sun. And when we look at Saturn, we see a lot of relation to our sun. The sun and Saturn become conjunct in the sky once every 54 weeks. In the alphabetic order, the word sun equals 54. Saturn equals 93. And our sun is said to be an average of 93 million miles from the Earth. So let's talk about how this code of mathematics and the circle ties into celebrity deaths, believe it or not. Now, a couple years ago, SpaceX made big news for launching a Tesla Roadster with Starman in it into Earth's orbit, where it would later go on its way to Mars. While this car was orbiting, it was playing 2 David Bowie songs on infinite loop. In the alphabetic order, David Bowie equals 94, just like SpaceX in reverse. This launch was on February 6th of 2018. That date was exactly 2 years and 27 days after David Bowie passed away. And 227 should have brought this up earlier. This is definitely one of those numbers to remember. We mentioned how 22 divided by 7 gives you pi on a calculator and in Gematria. But 227 has another quality. It's a prime number. This would be the 49th prime number. In reduction, David Bowie equals 49. Tesla Roadster sums to 49. It was launched in a Falcon Heavy rocket, which sums to 49. The 2 songs that were played on loop were called Space Oddity and Life on Mars, which both equal 49. And they called the little astronaut here Starman, which was David Bowie's nickname, as you see him here, and Starman equals 49. 227 is the Hebrew Gematria value of the phrase total eclipse. In English, total eclipse equals 47, just like the circle. David Bowie was born in the year 47. Remember, this is the number of degrees on the Masonic compass. Notice how the word eclipse has the same gematria as circles, and an eclipse is an intersection of the 2 largest circles in the sky. Furthermore, when they begin to intersect, they create a vesica Piscis in the middle. And notice how vesica Piscis has the same gematria as solar eclipse. In extended gematria, David Bowie equals 994. This is the same as the phrase total solar eclipse. And if you measure from the most recent total solar eclipse, or actually the next total solar eclipse to occur after David Bowie's death, you find it happened 59 days later. Looking ahead 2 total solar eclipses, He died 590 days before the Great American Eclipse. And in reverse reduction, David Bowie equals 59. So as we pointed out, the word pi equals 69, just like eclipse and circles. David Bowie died just 2 days after he turned 69 years old. And on his 69th birthday, he released his final album called Black Star. And think about the symbolism here. A star just like our sun, and then below you see images of that star being covered up, which conjures up imagery of an eclipse. In reverse ordinal, black star equals 156. This is the Hebrew value of the word eclipse. This is an important number because eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases apart from one another. The word black star also equals 33, which is the reduction value of eclipse. We'll get to that in a second. Now, where does this code come from? Why would a celebrity die by the numbers in accordance with an eclipse? This story comes from perhaps the most famous death of all time, the story of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. In the alphabetic order, Eclipse crucifixion code equals 227. This same phrase equals 1433, which is the 227th prime number. In reduction, Eclipse crucifixion code equals 119. This looks a lot like a date, 11/9, like the 11th of September. September the 11th has the same gematria as Eclipse crucifixion code. In 2001, by the way, there was a total solar eclipse that fell on the date of the summer solstice. A total solar eclipse on the solstice is an event that occurs only once or every 500 years. In the King James Version of the Bible, which is also considered the Masonic Bible, we find that darkness fell over the sky from the 6th to the 9th hour. Remember, the word eclipse equals 69. This Bible verse equals 1089, which is 33 squared. Now, what I was taught in Lutheran school is that Jesus was crucified at the age of 33. And since his birthday was in the year 0, this must have been in the year 33. The word eclipse equals 33 in reduction. And in Jewish gematria, the word 33 sums to 895, which is the same as ritual human sacrifice. Judas, who betrayed Jesus, also equals 895, and Jesus equals 985. Using the alphabetic order, crucifixion of Jesus Christ equals 303, and again, it's believed he was crucified at age 33. Another verse in the Gospels that mentions the 6th to the 9th hour is Matthew 27:45. Another verse to look at is Luke 23:44. And both of these verses also appear to be encoded with gematria. We have the Hebrew value of the word sacrifice, which is the 69th prime number, and eclipse equals 69. Next, we're going to look again at the number 93. Remember, this was the ordinal value of Saturn. We're told the sun is an average of 93 million miles away. In ordinal, God's sun equals 93. The word crucifix, 93, and Jesus was from Nazareth, 93. The phrase Christianity has a value of 930 in English Sumerian gematria, which is the alphabetic order times 6. And in the Bible, Adam lives to the age of 930. The New Testament, the Gospels, begin with the 930th chapter of the Bible. And it's also believed that Christ was crucified on April 3rd by the Lutheran, the Catholic Church. That's the 93rd day of the year. And again, it was from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., which was the 6th to the 9th hour. There's something also very, very significant about the number 1331. Now, we focused on the number 93 a lot. Well, or 33, I should say. 33 is 11 plus 11 plus 11. If you multiply 11 times 11 times 11, you get the number 1331. And in Jewish Gematria, Jesus the Messiah sums to 1331. 1331 is made up of a combination of two numbers, 133 and 331. Both of these numbers in Jewish Gematria sum to 1331. And here's a little visual demonstration of how these numbers come together to create 1331, just like an eclipse. Also in Jewish Gematria, 1331 eclipse equals 1331. And the only total solar eclipse to have occurred in the year 1331 was on the date November 30th, which is the only date that sums to 1331 in this cipher. This goes further. If you flip the word eclipse upside down, you get four numbers, 3173. Even that sums to 1331. And when you look at the path of totality of this 1331 eclipse, this is still to this day the only one I've ever seen where the path never touches a major body of water. So this is almost impossible. The moon has to be aligned just perfectly for this to occur. So we're talking about the Eclipse Crucifixion Code and the death of Jesus. In the alphabetic order, the words Jesus, cross, Messiah, gospel, and parables all sum to 74. In reverse reduction, Jesus Christ equals 74. Now also in ordinal, the words rapper and killing equals 74. And it does appear that the killing of many rappers has a lot to do with the number 74. We're going to look at several examples, beginning with one of the famous or most famous deaths of the 90s. In single reduction, Notorious B.I.G. equals 74, and his other nickname, Biggie Smalls, equals 74. He died just a few months after Tupac, which equals 74 in reverse, and his other nickname was Machiavelli, which equals 74 in ordinal. In the alphabetic order, Biggie equals 39. This is the value of eclipse in reverse reduction. Biggie died on March 9th, the date written 3/9. On that date was the only total solar eclipse of the year 1997, March 9th. In single reduction, Christopher Wallace and Eclipse Sacrifice both sum to 97, like the year he died. These also have other matching numbers like 290, which is the Jewish gematria of the name Christ. Meanwhile, Tupac Shakur, his name equals 139 in ordinal, and he died on the date 13/9, or the 13th of September. Those same digits are found in his full name, Tupac Amaru Shakur. Now, he did not die on the date of a total solar eclipse, but his real name, Lassane Crooks, has the exact same gematria as total eclipse in all four base ciphers. And the numerology of the date he died also sums to 137 and 47, just like his name and total eclipse. Fast forward to 2018. This actually happened on a date that I predicted we would see a major celebrity sacrifice because of how that date lined up to the two great American eclipses in 2017 and 2024. June 18th was exactly 43 weeks after the first and 303 weeks before the second. Jesus Christ equals 43, and Crucifixion of Jesus Christ equals 303. Lo and behold, we got the deaths of two big-name rappers that day, one of whom was XXXTentacion. This same phrase, Crucifixion of Jesus Christ, equals 123 in reduction. This man was born on 1/23. He died 146 days after his birthday, which is the reverse value of Jesus Christ. The name XXXTentacion equals 151, just like Jesus Christ, And he died on June 18th, which equals 151, and that number, 227. A couple months later, we got the death of Malcolm James McCormick, better known as Mac Miller. His name equals 79, and he died on the 7th of September, or 7/9, just like the Gematria of murder. The phrase Eclipse sacrifice equals 79 and 97. The phrase Crucifixion of Jesus Christ equals 2040 in Jewish Gematria, and he died 2040 days before the next Great American Eclipse. Earlier this year, we had the death of Nipsey Hussle, whose real name was Ermias Joseph Esgedem. Notice how his name sums to 330 and 93, two of the numbers we've established that are very significant to Christianity. The name Hussle equals 84 in ordinal. He died a span of exactly 84 weeks after the first Great American Eclipse. Hussle equals 33, and he died a span of 3 months and 3 days before the next total solar eclipse. Ermias Esgedem equals 137, just like total eclipse. He died 137 days before his birthday, which falls on the 227th day of the year. There's that number again. When you stylize his name, Nipsey Hussle, it sums to the same as solar eclipse. The numerology of the date he died has matching values with the word sacrifice. In 2017, we got the death of Chris Cornell. Of course, CC, C the third letter, so this is a lot like 33. The name Chris equals 33. He died at the MGM, which equals 33. And this was 3 months and 3 days before the 2017 Great American Eclipse. His good friend Chester Charles Bennington, another CC or 33, sang at this man's funeral. Later that year, Chester allegedly killed himself on Chris Cornell's birthday. The name Chester equals 33, and he died a span of 33 days before the 2017 Great American Eclipse. He also died on the 33rd parallel. Chris Cornell, born July 20th, the same date Chester Bennington died. That's also the date of the first moon landing. In Gematria, moon landing equals 118 ordinal. These two men were born exactly 11 years and 8 months apart. By the way, fake moon landing equals 69, so does July 20th and 20th of July. But what would you expect from a space administration with Gematria of 666, like National Aeronautics and Space Administration? Okay, so this part of the video, we're going to mix it up a little bit. Talk now about the organic matrix. And everything you're about to see from this point going forward is 100% true. Hand on the Bible, hand on the heart, swear to God, everything here is the truth. And this is the part of the video where I share the stuff that really, truly fascinates me about numerology and why I'm still sitting here to this day trying to show more and more people evidence of this organic matrix we live in, as it really should lead us to question our reality and what we as human beings are truly capable of. So let's continue. What we're looking at here is my last name, pronounced Tikuri. This is a Finnish name. It sums to 99, 90, and 36. And it's interesting because this is the same gematria as the moon. And so much of my work is centered around eclipses and, more specifically, the moon. Now, the 99th prime number is 523. And this is significant because on the date January 17th, 1923, which has gematria of 523, we began counting lunar phases. This is called the Brown lunation number. And lunation 1 began on January 17th of 23. In ordinal, January 17th is the first date to sum to 227. In English extended gematria, my name, Derek Tikuri, sums to, I guess you could call this an inverse of this number, 772. I was born on June 4th of 1985, which was during the 772nd Brown lunation. When I first began this work, I made a presentation called Signs of Time, and this was intended to introduce people to Gematria, numerology, our calendar, and a number of other topics. Now, I had a whole bunch of things in my head and a lot of notes. In order to organize these notes, I jumped on a call with a friend of mine who lives overseas in Serbia. And we put these pages of notes together. Maybe it was just 3 pages at the time. I don't remember the details. But there was a certain point where we were taking notes. And I said, okay, I think I got the flow down pat. We just wanted to make sure it made sense from start to finish, that we weren't jumping around too much. And I thought we got what we needed, and we were finished. So once I said that, I was like, man, I'm getting tired. It's after midnight here. What time is it over there? And he told me, well, it just happens to be 7:22 in the morning. And mind you, 227 was the number that we started this whole presentation off with. And I was like, all right, awesome. This is a perfect time to end the call, right? So we hung up and I went to sleep. Well, the next day I came back and he had a message in all caps. He said, look at the call time. That phone call was exactly 2 hours and 27 minutes to the second. And in no way whatsoever did we plan that. It just so happened to be the exact number that we started this presentation on. Now, you'll see in these notes, it starts with the number 227, then it ends with the number 777. This video that I created wound up in, there's the number 777 right there that I put on the thumbnail. The raw video file came out to 777 megabytes. And when you don't use the word and, 777 is the first number to sum to 314 in the alphabetic order. So I reached out to this guy because I wanted to talk about something about Saturn, and I found his NASA blog. Saturn equals 93, as we discussed, and Desi's 9 years, 3 months younger than me, and his birthday is 93 days after mine. Saturn also has gematria of 119 when we use capital letters. Now, this is the number of all-seeing eye. And if you look at pictures of Saturn's pole, you can kind of see where the phrase all-seeing eye maybe comes from. This number has followed me around in life as well. My mom's full name equals 119. I was born 1 month, 19 days before her birthday, and I was born 9 months, 11 days before my dad's birthday. My ex, who I was with for almost 8 years, I met her on the date 11/9, and her full name also sums to 119 in the same cipher as my mom's. Okay, so this part of the riddle is especially strange. Now, I got into numerology a few years ago, but I've always kind of known that I was supposed to find something in, I don't know. I always felt like, I don't want to say I was destined for something more, but a lot of you can relate, right? Like, I was at my job, just doing my thing every day, doing my normal life, but it wasn't satisfying. It wasn't bringing any fulfillment to my life. I wanted more. I wanted more out of life. And I was always kind of, I always had a strange idea about reality. And the first real clue that I had about how strange our reality is came when I was 16 years old, and actually a couple of years later into my teen years as well. It's a personal story, but what happened is when I was 16, in that summer, I woke up one morning and I had a dream about this girl I worked with, and suddenly I was overwhelmingly in love with her, and I don't know why. Like, she was just a friend, we got along. Someone suggested maybe we could be boyfriend, girlfriend. I didn't really think much of it, but it just clicked overnight. I woke up and I was just like kind of obsessed almost. And, you know, it wasn't through any choice of mine, but what can you do? And, of course, nothing ever worked out between us. She was a couple years older than me, had already graduated. Why would she want to be with me, right? But this ultimately ended up changing my course in life. After that, I couldn't really focus on school. I stopped doing my homework. And granted, that same summer, I also had a very deeply spiritual experience. So it wasn't just love that changed my life, but also finding God as well. And I looked around school and I just thought, this isn't for me. I have no business here. I don't need to be here. And I just stopped doing all my work. Well, a couple years later, I ended up actually going out with a different girl, and she was a couple years younger than me. And it just so happened that she also had the name Katie. So the first girl I fell for was also named Katie, and then I ended up dating this other girl named Katie. Well, one day it kind of occurred to me, man, they're both a little more than 2 years apart from my age. And I did the calculations and figured out that, yeah, one Katie was born 784 days before me. Then the Katie that I ended up going out with was born 784 days after me. And again, this is when I was like 19, right? So this was more than 10 years before I ever discovered Gematria. But I realized this and thought, that can't be a coincidence. That is too weird. So this brings me to a little bit of discussion about the Metonic cycle. And if you check my YouTube channel, I have a lot of videos about the Metonic cycle, especially recently. And this is something I've been talking about that's coded heavily in many things, including mainstream news stories and whatnot. But as it turns out, the Metonic cycle is coded into my own damn life. The Metonic cycle is a period of 19 years that syncs up with 235 lunar phases. The name Katie equals 19 reduction and 235 extended. Now, if you add these two numbers, you get 254, which is the number of sidereal months in the Metonic cycle. And September 11th is the 254th day of the year. And the only day I ever saw the first Katie at school in the building was on September 11th, 2001. 784 days is also 2 years and 54 days. The first Katie that I just suddenly fell for overnight, her first and last name has the same gematria as the moon, 99, 423, and 283. And I've redacted her name because I haven't talked to her in years, and, you know, I did get permission from some other people, but this is some really, really strange stuff. And yes, I feel weird sharing it. But again, if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this justice. I truly believe that this world is far more magical than anything we can ever comprehend. And to me, this is the only way I can express this, the only way that I can try to share it with you. So this presentation that I put together for Anarchadelphia, my workshop was originally scheduled for the 13th. I ended up speaking on the main stage on the 14th. It turns out that even that whole conference was by the numbers for me, and this was my first public speaking experience, so that would kind of stand to reason. In reduction, my name equals 61, just like Philadelphia in reverse. This convention began on a date with numerology of 61. In ordinal, both Anarchadelphia and Philadelphia sums to 101. September 13th was 101 days after my birthday. So I built the Gematrinator calculator in January of 2017, and at the time, I really did not have any understanding whatsoever of the organic matrix. I was having experiences that were pointing me in the direction that Gematria is perhaps something far more greater than what I had previously thought. But I wasn't really decoding my own name, my own birthday, my own life, or anything like that. I hadn't got to that point yet. I was just looking at the news and sports and all that good stuff. Well, after I built the calculator and began teaching numerology, I discovered some really amazing things about my own name. First of all, my name, Derek, has the same gematria as the word numbers. All four matches in the same base ciphers except for 25 and 97, but that's a prime number relationship. My last name, Tikori, has the same gematria as letters. And when you add my first and last name, you get 142, which is the reverse value of gematria. I added reverse gematria to my calculator, and up to that point, I'm not aware of any other calculator online that had reverse gematria. Well, my full name in Jewish gematria equals 1198, which is the same as reverse gematria. This even extends to astrology. On the date I was born, Saturn, the black sun, was at 233 degrees of the ecliptic. The sun reached 74 degrees of the ecliptic just a couple hours after I was born. The word Gematria equals 233 Jewish and 74 ordinal. Now, I also found something significant about my name. There's this alignment between my name and my birthday. In ordinal, my full name equals 203, like the number 23. My birth numerology, 6 plus 4 plus 8 plus 5 equals 23. And I was born exactly 23 weeks before the next total solar eclipse. And this is interesting because when a lot of people see my work, they think of the movie The Number 23, where Jim Carrey literally teaches people the language of Gematria. And mind you, he does this in another movie as well, where he plays the Riddler. Jim Carrey is 23 years older than me. My full name equals 95. Jim Carrey's full name equals 95 in reverse. Number 23 equals 2100. I was 21 years old when the movie came out. Number 23 equals 223, just like the date it came out. Also interesting, it was 66 weeks and 6 days before my 23rd birthday. We touched on the significance of the number 1331 and the eclipse to have occurred that year. It turns out there seems to be a 1331 riddle with the Matrix. The Matrix came out on 3/31, which was a date with 133 numerology. Remember, both 133 and 331 sum to 1331. On that same date, I was a span of 13 years, 301 days old. My dad's full name sums to 130 and 301 in reverse, and my mom, with all her added married names, equals 1331 in Jewish Gematria. There's also this movie Pi, and just for an even weirder part of this, when I moved into my new house back in 2017, I was unpacking some totes, and one of the items at the bottom of one of the totes was a movie cassette, the VHS of the movie Pi. A good friend of mine had left it with my stuff a long time ago, and I had no idea I had it, but suddenly it popped up. And in this movie, this guy, Sean Gillette, builds a program that essentially runs the Gematria on the Torah and discovers the 216-letter name of God. On my website, you can get the English Gematria of the King James Bible in Excel format. Anyways, this movie came out on July 10th, which was 1 month and 6 days after my birthday. The word pi equals 16 in reduction. The word birthday equals 604 in Jewish Gematria, and not only is that my birthday, but that's also the birthday of Sean Gillette, the man who played this character in the movie. In Gematria, Sean Gillette sums to the same as Gematrinator. Using a cipher called square numbers, where each number in ordinal is multiplied by itself prior to adding it to the equation, the word pi equals 337. Now, 337 is the 68th prime number. Sean Gillette was born in the year 68. And on the date this movie came out, he was 30 years, 37 days old. My full name in reverse Gematria equals 337. And when this movie came out, I was 13 years, 37 days old. And this is a number that keeps popping up. You know, when I built the calculator, at the time I built it, my work cubicle was A3037. $3,037 was my first property tax bill at the property I owned. I was born 3,307 days after the youngest of my 3 older brothers. And even my ex was 33 years and 7 days old when we broke up. On March 31st of 2007, I started my drive out and moved to California to chase a dream as a musician. Exactly 10 years later to that very day, I happened to buy my first house. Now, the move-in date was June 1st. And that's just a few days before my 32nd birthday. The word house equals 32. And then after I figured that out, the residents called my real estate agent and asked for 3 more days of residency. So I moved in exactly on my 32nd birthday. And I wore number 32 in Little League, both in hockey and in baseball. My name sums to the same as my dad's, 130, in reverse reduction. I paid exactly $130,000 for my house. And my address is the same year my dad was born, the same 4 digits. There's more to it, but I'm not quite going to give away exactly where I live. Now, fortunately, some of my friends, and these are just people I've talked to in the last couple months about this even, it turns out that a lot of my friends seem to be coding themselves by the numbers without even realizing it. And this is something people continue to discover on their own. So some of my friends were gracious enough to let me share their numerology with you. And here, for instance, is my friend Mitch. His full name equals 100 in reduction. And when we go out, he dresses up as his alter ego, Darth Rager. Using the alphabetic order, Darth Rager equals 100. And he is heavily numerically linked to his girlfriend here, too, which I could do a whole other video on. My friend Skylar likes to play up on his tall and lanky frame, so he often dresses up as a giraffe. His name equals 52, just like giraffe in ordinal. And I had to laugh when he sent me these pictures because all of them had an arm slinky, which equals 111, just like his first name. And then there's my friend TJ, who often dresses up in Cat in the Hat garb. And, you know, this is a pretty rare thing for people to do, but the kind of person who does it would probably have the same gematria as Cat in the Hat. His full name summing to 62 and 109, just like Cat in the Hat. But we don't call him Trevor, we call him TJ. His name, TJ Osman, has the same gematria as Dr. Seuss's full real name. A couple months ago, my sister-in-law asked me to take a look at her numerology and explain why she thought the number 13 was lucky. It's pretty rare for someone to have 13 as a lucky number, as this is almost universally considered unlucky. However, when you write out the number 13, not only do you get her birthday, the 4th of May, 45, but you also get her birth numerology, 117. She got married to my brother, who was just about exactly 13 years older than her, and his first name sums to the same as 13. They got married on the date 16/9, the 16th of September. 169 is 13 squared. The next day, she was 9,999 days old, just like how 13 equals 99. And that date where she was this age here, her full name equals 179, just like the date. I actually lived with my brother and her sister, and his wife, my sister-in-law, prior to buying my house, and I lived at their house for exactly 13 months and 13 days. In 2017, I drove down to southern Illinois to look at the total solar eclipse. And after I got back, I found out my friend who I drove down there with has the same gematria as total solar eclipse. Remember 1331, the eclipse number? This sums to 233. This eclipse was on the 233rd day of the year, and my friend that I went with was born 233 days before me. And it's weird, you know, I almost get choked up at the end of that, talking about that, because to me, when you look at the organic side of things and see how our own life is playing out by the numbers, and obviously in no way possible is there some Freemasons in a dark room somewhere plotting that out, to me, that is the absolute proof of the existence of some sort of creator, some mechanism, some sort of God that is generating our reality as we go. And my take on gematria now is that, look, you know, I started completely enveloped in conspiracy theory, and that's what draws a lot of eyes. A lot of people like to talk about conspiracies, and especially me. And I 100% believe that I am not the first person to build a gematria calculator and make these observations about our world. However, this knowledge appears to be sequestered to secret societies, and those in high places are certainly using it to code their agenda, to push things forward. I totally believe that. But you're not going to wake everybody up that way. I think some people are more susceptible to understanding the organic matrix side of things, and it's been a long journey for me to accept what is organic and what is man-made. And again, I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't think that people were using this language, this code, to their advantage. My theory is that if our real life is truly happening by the numbers, and Gematria is hooked up to this organic matrix somehow, wouldn't it make sense that false events are also coded the same way so that the subconscious gets it? Because I believe that our brains at a subconscious level are actually calculating Gematria, and this just makes sense to me. Think about a colony of ants, right? The way they communicate. They don't talk to each other. There's a certain scent. So one might say that they're programming one another. Perhaps language is humans' ways of programming one another. Again, these are just theories. I specialize in facts and true mathematics, but Gematria to me is a very, very significant mystical belief, and to me it's understanding of how God creates what we experience here on Earth, the manifested reality. I don't think we live on or in a planet. I think we live inside of a realm, a construct. You know, I don't like the term simulation theory because what exactly is it that we're simulating? I don't know. But the fact that we're living in a mechanism, that we have a purpose, that everything happens for a reason, and that there are no coincidences by definition as we've grown to understand it, I totally, completely believe that. So that's really all I got. And I just wanted to make sure I had this in a condensed, digestible format. Of course, this was a little bit over an hour, but not too bad, actually, considering how much information I packed in here. So thanks to everybody who jumped in. I'm going to be linking this video now down below, probably all my other videos from now on. So hopefully this gets a lot of views. And again, I tried to make as much basic sense of it as I could. So feel free to share. Of course, like and subscribe to the content, as YouTube does not like to do this type of enlightening work any favors. All right, guys. Peace, love, and all of God's blessings to you out there. Please take care of yourselves and have a great week. We'll talk to you later. See